Greetings, my name is Kerry and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a tag video for you. This is called the Book Snob Tag. It was originally created by Tia and All the Books. I will link her original video down in the description box for you. And I saw this done by Katie from Kit Kats Can Read, so I'll link her video down there as well. I wasn't actually tagged to do this, but I really enjoyed the questions, so I thought I'd give them a go. So the first question is adaptation snob. Do you always read the book before you see the movie? So you may have seen I've recently made a couple of videos about adaptations. I'll link them for you. So I have my 5 faves adaptations and I had the book to screen adaptations discussion video. So I'll link both of them so you can see that. I do always try to to read the book first if I can, so that I can picture the stories and the characters and the settings in my own imagination first, and then generally will follow that up with watching the film or TV adaptation. Sometimes I don't have the time. If it's a film on limited release in the cinema that I really want to see, then I will try and go and see that first. It will depend on how important the book is to me. If experiencing the story is the most important thing, then I won't mind about seeing the film first. But if it's an author I really love, for example, I will try my best to read the book first and experience their words and their writing. I think it often also depends on the style of the book. So I came to the Hunger Games a bit later than everyone else and didn't read any of the books or watch any of the films until the first 2 films had come out. And then they were showing the films on TV and I felt like I'd been missing out. So I asked a couple of friends who had read them, was it alright just to go straight into watching the films, or did they think I should read the books first? They suggested that because it's told in a first-person narrative, I'd get a lot more out of it from reading the book first, and they were right, I did. I felt I understood the story much better from doing that. So I think it really depends on the situation, but if I have the opportunity to read the book, I will always try and read the book before I see the film. Question 2, format snob. You can only choose one format in which to read books for the rest of your life. Which do you choose? Physical, ebooks or audiobooks? This one was quite an easy one for me. I don't really read audiobooks or read ebooks, so physical books all the way. I do occasionally read ebooks, but not very often. I don't really enjoy it as a format. I think because when I was doing my MA, because it was a distance learning programme, all of our reading was sent as PDFs, so I kind of associate reading on an e-reader with working as opposed to leisure time and enjoyment, and I enjoy the feel of having a physical book. I also don't really do audiobooks because I struggle to concentrate when I'm only listening to something. I need a visual really to keep me engaged. Yeah, so audiobooks don't really work for me. That's no shade on anyone that enjoys those formats, they're just not my cup of tea. So yeah, physical books all the way. Would not greatly affect my life if that was the only format I was allowed to access books in. Question 3, ship snob. Would you date or marry a non-reader? Probably, yeah. I'm not dating anyone at the moment, so this is something that I do think about. Are the people I date going to be accepting of how much of my life is consumed by books? So if I'm dating someone and they're quite happy with the amount of time, money and effort reading and book related hobbies takes up in my life, then we'll be fine. If they are judgy of that, then they're out the door, really. So, I mean, it comes down to supporting each other in your hobbies. So I want to be with someone who is supportive of me and my hobbies, and I hope that I would be supportive of them and theirs. And so long as we can meet each other halfway on that they're not gonna get upset by how much space my bookshelves take up, then we'll be fine. I would happily date someone who wasn't as into reading as I was, so long as they don't mind how much into reading I am, if that makes sense. Question 4, genre snob. You have to ditch one genre, never to be read again for the rest of your life. Which do you ditch? I thought a little bit about this. There are a couple of genres that I don't really read very often, and those are horror and romance, like straight romance, where the entire plot of the book is about romance. Of the two, I think horror is the one I can more easily get rid of because I don't really enjoy being scared. So I don't read a lot of horror, and I don't think it would greatly affect my life if I never read horror books again. So yeah, I'll get rid of that one probably. Question 5, uber genre snob. You can only choose to read from one genre for the rest of your life. Which genre do you choose? This is actually a really difficult question for me because I read so widely. I don't tend to limit myself to one genre very often. I read a whole range of books, non-fiction and fiction, poetry, and a wide range of genres from science fiction, fantasy, historical fiction, contemporary, literary, classics, all of that. Narrowing it down is really difficult, and I also find it difficult if I'm reading. One thing that can trigger a reading slump in me is if I'm reading too much of the same genre in one go. So I would actually really struggle if I was only allowed to read one genre for the rest of my life. On that basis, if I did have to choose, I think I'd probably go for historical fiction because it covers such a wide range that I could still find some differentiation within the book. So I could read a book about ancient Rome one day, and then I could read a book set in Victorian times the next day, and then at least I would get a little bit of variety still within my reading, particularly if it could include like the odd element of magical realism. If it could include stuff like steampunk or subgenres of the main genre, then that would help. But yeah, historical fiction would give me enough scope, I think, to remain interested and not get bored of reading too much of the same genre. So I think that's what we're going to go for. Question 6. Community snob. Which genre do you think receives the most snobbery from the bookish community? I think fans of particular genres often do feel like their favourite genre is snubbed the most. There are some genres that are more looked down on than others. I suppose romance is one of them that often gets looked down on. But the one thing that I did want to say on this one is actually in terms of the wider bookish community, not just BookTube or BookTwitter, because I think BookTube is fairly on the mark with this, but in wider bookish circles, fantasy written by women, I think, really gets judged harshly. It's often assumed it's for a younger audience than it is. I'm not saying this to say anything against YA, because I love YA, and I think it's really good for the audience that it's intended for, and for anyone else that enjoys that particular type of books. But I think often, particularly fantasy books by female authors, are mislabeled as YA when they're not, and that's because of an assumption within certain parts of the bookish community that women can't write serious novels. So all women's novels are classed as either younger than they are, or like if a man writes about family relationships then it's literary fiction, but if a woman writes about family relationships then it's romance or chick lit. And I think that actually often books by women are considered to be lesser than they actually are, particularly by men. But I think that is actually an issue as well. There's been lots of examples of books being written by women that are mislabeled as YA that contain some very adult content that is not appropriate for the younger end of YA. And that's it. I mean, it is down to individual readers to judge whether a book is appropriate for them, but there are examples of books with some really serious dark content that could end up in people that are not emotionally mature enough to deal with that, and that to me is a problem. So we need to have a better system of figuring out who the intended audience for books are, and that's from all aspects of the publishing industry really that needs to address that. And then final question 7 is snobbery recipient. Have you ever been snubbed for something that you have been reading or for reading in general? I haven't actually written down an answer to this on my piece of paper either because I'm not entirely sure. I don't feel like I have been, but I know I probably was at school. My friends and I at secondary school would spend our lunchtimes in the library because it was easier than having to engage with people that were mean to us in some ways. And it was just quiet, and you could sit in the dry and you could read books, and it was fun. And that was what we did. We enjoyed that. But yeah, some people thought we were weird for that. I was always sort of judged to be bookish and academic. And yeah, actually there was a situation a couple of years ago at work, I'd forgotten about this, where one of the managers of the department that I worked in was trying to encourage people to go to the work Christmas party, and I didn't particularly want to go. She was really trying to hard sell it and really trying to push me to go to it. I said something about my idea of a good night is a quiet night in with my book, and she said something about, do you not like fun? Do you not like watching drunk people fall over? Do you not like music? You need to go home and think about your life. And I went home and thought about my life, and I was quite happy with my life choices in the end. I don't associate fun with watching drunk people fall over. I do associate fun with curling up with a good book. So yeah, occasionally I feel like people judge me for that, but I don't care. And actually generally more people are really, I suppose, impressed by the amount of books that I read. I've had some really lovely conversations with other people at work more recently. I'm in a different job now, and a couple of years ago, about a year ago actually, I was talking to this one chap who I was working with at the time, and he asked me how many books did I read, like, on average a month. He was really surprised when I told him, because he didn't really read at all. And then a couple of months later, he said to me that he'd been really impressed by what I'd said about how I enjoy reading and how it's escapism for me and how it helps me, like, sort of cope with life, and that he'd actually gone out and bought himself a Kindle and was, like, reading a lot more since then. And that was really, like, a lovely thing, that I'd inspired someone to read more. Yeah, more generally have people who are encouraged and inspired by my reading habits than snobbish towards them. But it's one of the things where I'm quite happy with the way I live my life these days, and I don't let other people judge me for those decisions particularly. So that is that. I'm not going to tag anyone today because I wasn't tagged to do this tag, but if you like the questions, then please feel free to do them and say that I tagged you, and let me know if you do, because I'd love to see your answers. Have a chat to me down in the comments. Do you agree with any of the things that I've said? What are some genres you love or that you avoid? To have a chat with me down in the comments. Please like this video if you liked it. Please think about subscribing if you haven't already. It's a great way to support my channel and help me know that you like my content. You can also talk to me on my social media. All that information is always listed in the description box below. But that's all for today, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.